literal war going on between, and this is a very small neighborhood, a war, with AK-47s and MAC-10s and Uzis, like war. Like seeing people getting cut in half, like coming out the house and, your boy right there, like, with his guts spilling all out of it. I mean, that kind of war, So when I say war, I mean war.
Jordan Downs, Nickerson Gardens, Imperial Courts, and Hacienda Village. 4 neighborhoods, all located inside a 2-square-mile district in south-central Los Angeles. The neighborhoods, separated by only a railroad track. The people, separated by colors. Red and Blue had ruled the streets of Watts, California, home to 4 rival gangs associated with either the Bloods or Crips. Simply wearing the wrong color in the wrong part of Watts could result in brutal repercussions. Watts, California consists of the largest concentration of public housing west of the Mississippi River. The majority of people who lived within Watts were impoverished and lived within small houses or apartments. Watts for the past 30 years has housed roughly 17,000 people per square mile, reaching a high of 41,000 people total in 2008. Watts had always been ridden with crime, participating in a 30-year gang war, only to be concluded on April 28, 1992. The 28th of April was a significant day for Watts, with not only the trial of Rodney King almost coming to a verdict, but more importantly, the truce that concluded over 30 years of violence in Watts.
And some get none, some catch a bad one, and some leave the job half done. I was one who never had and always mad, never knew my dad, the fact. Well, anyway, I did pick up, listen and click up, see many stick-ups, cause British had to trigger hiccups. I couldn't get a job, nappy hair was not allowed. My mother couldn't afford us, all she had to throw me out. I walked the strip.
The Watts gang truce created a ripple effect throughout the country. The tone that the truce set in 1992 was still felt throughout gangs and cities everywhere. Watts was the domino in a line of gang truces to be put in place in following years. The truce proves that even the biggest conflicts can come to a compromise, and sometimes that a small change can have drastic influences on everything around it.
I'm laying in my bed and I started to reflect on my childhood. And what we didn't have in material possessions, we made up with our imagination.
Akias Sherrills, a now public figure, grew up in Watts. He had witnessed crime and violence from an age no one ever should have. From murderers to drug deals to robberies and muggings, violence had destroyed the neighborhood culture. However, in the media, the neighborhood violence was only credited to gangs. But it wasn't the gangs who were killing the neighborhood. As Akias states it, poverty is the real killer. Only about 3% of gang members are committing violent crimes. Known as the shooters, these gang members aren't very often huge influencers in gang culture. The media still paints these gangs and their members as atrocious and unrelenting murderers and gangbangers.
My whole philosophy was to stop the brothers from killing each other, because right now there is no way out. Only way out is either give them better jobs, but that's not happening. Nobody's working at Mickey D's nowadays, because these guys make more money than I do in a week just on the street. So my thing was to come up with a record. These guys can make some money and can better
Akias
their
Sherrills
lives.
was accepted to attend California State University in 1988, where he would study engineering, as he'd always been math inclined due to his partially photographic memory. During his year at college, Sherrills had gone through, as he describes it, a transformative experience. Sherrills had met a girl at a party. The girl and him had hit it off almost immediately. Sherrills was convinced that he was ugly and that she had been using him for something else. Sherrills was confused as to why a woman of her beauty and intellect would love him. Sherrills describes his encounters with violating her privacy by reading her diary because she felt she must have been cheating. Sherrills, however, went on to sleep with another female where he contracted an STD, which he passed to his girlfriend. When she confronted him, he of course denied it, and they broke up. But when he decided to do the first noble thing in his life, and told the woman that it was him who transmitted the STD to her, he came to the realization that it was because of the sexual and physical assault that he had experienced as a child that he had cheated on her. This realization led him to think of how many other people suffered the same type of violence and abuse, and why hadn't anyone come to help?
I never thought that you would grab me, undermine me, and backstab me, but I can see clearly now that
they're turning their frustrations into money.
This realization and experience that led Akias to come up with the idea of a gang truce between the 4 rival gangs. Akias left California State in 1989 as he couldn't afford the dorm rooms or his classes. He then moved back to Watts, where the truce began to truly manifest. Akias spread his idea throughout the neighborhoods, spiking people's interest like his brother Daoud Sherrills. However, some people were receptive to the idea of a truce. Akias got a lot of negative reactions from the neighborhoods. Many people believed that it would be impossible to get the rivals to agree on a ceasefire. But Akia remained encouraged, and as almost 3 years went by, his efforts began to bloom into what was soon to become the 1992 Watts gang truce. The gang war took almost 2,500 lives a year, with 13 of Akia's close friends being killed in 1992. The war was horrific. It wasn't anything anyone could imagine. It wasn't a war between the U.S. and another country. This was a war on our own streets, between our own people. It was a war that had already taken over 20,000 lives and could have taken thousands more. Throughout the week of the 25th of April 1992 to the 28th, the truce spread like a California wildfire. Originally by word of mouth, but on the 27th an official truce was released. Daoud Sheriff had played a key role in writing the truce. The truce took lots of inspiration from the 1949 Egypt-Israel truce designed by the UN. Some direct quotes were used and some lines were changed to fit the gang truce. On the night of the 28th, the truce was official. The G homies, or the gang leaders and primary gang members, had agreed to the truce, and others just went through the streets chanting that the truce was on.
I'm running from the police. At the spot, just hanging with the.
You know, we was standing outside. We was like, y'all with the peace treaty? They was like, yeah. We was like, they was like, y'all with it? We was like, yeah. We was like, it's on then. You know. So we started.
Just like that, the treaty was on. The treaty had been one of two substantial events of 1992, with the verdict of Rodney King trial coming out on the 29th, just one day after the treaty. The verdict, which acquitted 3 police officers and charged 1 officer with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon after beating Rodney King, following a high-speed chase. The verdict inspired what is now more widely known than even the peace treaty, the 1992 LA riots. People rioted in the streets for days, causing over $1 billion in property damage. Most of the rival gang members and criminals who would have once jumped at the opportunity to commit crime were now partying together in the streets of Watts, still celebrating the truce. Rodney King was found dead in his swimming pool June 17, 2012.
They hear gunshots, they hear helicopters, they see cop cars screeching by. That goes on till 1, 2, 3 in the morning.
They had to be exposed to each other where there wouldn't be violence.
And for the first 2-3 years, there was a lot of yelling.
Some of those guys are on television, enhancing the gangsterism of our society, because there's a lot of money there.
These brothers don't even know themselves. They are caught up in a gang that they didn't start. Now they're moving off impulses and they're moving off compulsions because life is real. And when people die, pain is real.
They shot my mama 4 times. It hit me. It's real after that.
What you see is what you get. You know, all my friends gang bang. Oh, nigga, we
started, organizing in the housing projects with the idea that we're going to bring an end to the killing.
The effects of the truce were noticeable from day one, and in the next 2 years, gang-related homicides had dropped 44%. But during the first few months after the truce, there was a lot of skepticism, from not only the community, but some of the gang members as well. The original skepticism was that the truce wouldn't work. However, as time went on, and the truce began to hold, the skepticism moved, and the idea that the truce couldn't last began to take over the neighborhoods. And for a short period of time, crime rates went back up, but soon after went right back down, proving that after a compromise, persistence can always help the cause. The gang members were persistent with the truce, and the truce held. Its effects are still seen today. From 2004 until 2014, there was 10 consecutive years of a decrease in gang violence. The truce started a domino effect, and other cities around the country followed in suit, designing treaties and having a decrease in violence in their cities. It takes people's determination like Akia Sherrills to be able to architect and implement a compromise within a conflict-infested neighborhood. The peace treaty ended a 30-year war, stopping killing, robberies, muggings, shootings, stabbings, and many other violent crimes that were committed in Watts by gang members and other criminals. Akia's persistence and drive to change something that so many people thought would be impossible has had a very positive effect on the community, state, and U.S. as a whole.
We must recognize that only through a process of cooperation and unity will the wounds and sores begin to heal.
Watts, we like to say it's like a heartbeat, that when it's good, it's better than you could possibly imagine, because people love really, really intensely in the neighborhood. When it's bad, man, it's the worst you could possibly imagine.